Tikatee here with Questline Esports, and here's everything you need to know about Ramattra. His primary fire uses his Void Accelerator to fire a stream of small projectiles which deal a moderate amount of damage but can be difficult to hit at range due to their travel time. His secondary fire with his Void Accelerator creates a barrier at a target location that will block incoming projectiles for a short period of time. This is great for blocking important abilities and for protecting you and your team from enemies that are just out of reach. His first ability transforms Ramattra into his Nemesis Form, gaining bonus armor and changing your primary and secondary attacks. His primary fire becomes a punch that will deal damage to all enemies in front of you. His secondary fire becomes a block that significantly reduces damage taken from the front and reduces your movement speed. The block can be used at any time without cooldown while in Nemesis Form. His secondary ability is Ravenous Vortex, which launches a projectile that expands into a zone which slows, damages, and pulls enemies downward. This is a good tool to either keep enemies at bay for longer while in Omnic form, or to keep them within range of your primary fire while in Nemesis form. Ramattra's ultimate is Annihilation. Ramattra will enter Nemesis form and create a damaging field around him. If any enemies are taking damage from Annihilation, the timer for the duration of the ultimate will be paused, meaning he can stay in Nemesis form for as long as there are enemies nearby. This is a very heavy-hitting ultimate, especially when the enemies are forced into close quarters, such as when they're trying to capture an objective or forced onto a payload in overtime. Blizzard has labeled Ramattra as a tempo tank, which means he's comfortable playing at different speeds depending on the context. He can keep enemies at range with his Void Accelerator and slowing their approach with his barrier and slow field, or he can get in close and brawl it out with the best of them, soaking heavy hits and hitting back harder. You'll want to look for strong positions that benefit his Omnic form and use his poke damage to farm up ultimate charge and whittle down approaching enemies. But then once the enemy is committed, switch things up and punish them with your Nemesis form and high close range damage. Look for areas of the map like choke points and high grounds that allow for these transitions more easily. My advice is to try to not get too aggressive with Ramattra. Without any mobility in his kit, he becomes quite vulnerable in open space, or when out of defensive cooldowns. While it is tempting to run headfirst into the enemy and start throwing your fists around, committing too early will guarantee a quick trip back to your spawn room. Now get out there, it's time to start an uprising.